You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio. So hi everyone, Harsha here, and welcome to another episode of Changing Reality. Welcome one, welcome all. And if this is your first time joining the show, Changing Reality is the show that features phenomenal people from all walks of life who are in essence changing their own reality. And through this show, we have the opportunity to speak and hang out with phenomenal people from social change makers, entrepreneurs, business owners, industry leaders, thought leaders, to even artists, musicians, and inspiring individuals all across the world. And by hearing these stories on how they have changed their reality, the reality of those around them, hopefully we'll be able to pick up the little nuggets of wisdom that we can use in our own lives as well. And I wanted to do this show simply because I felt like there are a lot of people out there who do phenomenal things and make waves in the lives of those around them. And I'm super passionate about learning how these people are changing the world in their own capacity. To show you how important these stories have been in inspiring others, stories has been something that has personally impacted my life, and I've seen impact the lives of those around me as well. So I actually founded and run a youth movement called Ascendance back at home in Malaysia, where we started, which today collaborates with not just our own Malaysian Ministry of Education, but works with over 28 countries to help provide an alternative education for any student who wants to change their reality. So we work with students all the way from elementary to college through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities, and projects that help them discover their passion, learn about themselves and the world around them, get equal and equitable access to top-tier resources from C-suite executives, from stories and workshops and experiences from the experienced individuals out there, but also help them craft their own projects and their own experiential learning opportunities to explore the things that they want. And to date, we've been fortunate to work with over 35,000 students, 970 communities, and have incubated countless number of student-run projects and social enterprises run by students as young as 8 to 20 years old. So the reason we've been able to do all this, the reason we've been able to create all of this impact has been stories. It's been kind individuals who've been willing to share their time to step out of their busy schedule and tell us the lessons, the things that they've learned that have not only changed their life, but have enabled them to grow in their careers and the things that they are passionate about as well. And those stories have today inspired the kids at Ascendance. It's inspired me. And just like that, I hope that this show is that same platform for you. That through this show, you are able to meet and learn from the people who are living phenomenal lives. And from there, take the strands of information that you need to actually go out there and change your own reality. So if there's anything specific that you want to talk about, if there's any specific industries you want to explore, any specific experiences you want to uncover, let us know and we'll do our best to cover it on the show for you guys to listen and learn from. So today we have another brilliant guest speaker. We have someone who has a truly inspiring story on how they managed to actually create the work life that they wanted. We have with us Wyatt, the head of strategy at operations at Clipboard Health. So if you do not know, Clipboard Health is a brilliant Series C startup that is an online marketplace that unlocks new opportunities and solutions for healthcare facilities and healthcare professionals throughout the nation. So they use, through their app, in a sense, allow healthcare facilities to post up available shifts, jobs, and opportunities for qualified independent healthcare professionals to engage with and sign up and earn the income that they need in a more flexible and amazing way. So they have been recognized as, I think, Y Combinator is one of their top startups, and today is doing phenomenally and have grown so much in the last few years. So Wyatt here serves not just as their head of strategy, but is the person who's actually responsible for managing the whole strategy and operations team, which overlooks analyzing and intervening within their marketplace, launching new products, leading the operation team within the business, and he also authors a monthly portfolio that sets company-wide investment directions and establishes strategic goals for the organization. Prior to Clipboard Health, Wyatt spent time in the healthcare IT implementations world. He had some time and experiences in the investment banking world, technology sales, and so much more. He graduated from Clemson University with a degree in economics, and today we're so grateful to have him on our show to be able to uncover how he managed to craft that career that he's passionate about, that has taught him so much today with us all. So without further ado, let's welcome our phenomenal speaker onto our virtual stage. So welcome, Wyatt. How is your day going today?
It's going great. It's a beautiful day in New York City, a nice fall afternoon, so no complaints here.
I have to ask because I have never been to New York and I heard the fall weather is nice and relaxing, but I'm from a tropical country which is blazing sun all the time. So tell me, when I go to New York, will I freeze to death at this time in the year?
Maybe 2 weeks from now you might freeze to death, but right now it's pretty nice.
What? That's when oh gosh, that's terrible. Okay, now I wish I didn't ask. Well, thank you for the honesty. I'm going to cry silently about this while we jump into the interview. But I really do appreciate you coming in and sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us here today. So, welcome to the show. We often start off by, uncovering a little gossip, finding out a little bit about how you were when you were a student. And you seem like someone who has everything planned out. I mean, head of strategy, sending out, company-wide goals and directions. That is huge. So for college students who can't even figure out our own lives right now, it can seem a little impossible to get there one day. So tell us a little bit about how you were like when you were a student. Were you the kind of person who had the grand plan, the strategy, everything in place? Or were you more like the rest of us, lowly, regular human beings?
I don't know if I would say lowly regular human beings. I don't know if that's the right term, but I definitely did not have it all together, I would say. I think I was trying to figure things out, much like I think a lot of college students are, and had, quite frankly, little to no idea what I wanted to do after school. And there was definitely a bit of a learning curve there for me. But I think I'll leave it at that. I think there was a lot to learn about myself, what I wanted to do, and none of that was figured out. I'd say even for the first year or two after I finished school as well.
Okay, all right. Tell us what decisions you were thinking about while you were in school. I mean, it feels right now that these are the hardest decisions we're going to make. What courses do we study? What experiences do we take? How did you go about navigating those initial questions? Were you, thinking about discovering what you want to do? Were you trying to try out as many things as possible? How did you go about at least attempting to figure out what your direction was?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming out of high school, going into Clemson, where I studied for undergraduate, I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I was looking around at different majors. I came from my dad is in business and thought, I'll do something very broad and do something kind of business related. So I started out in the business school. I think they have a general business program at Clemson for your first semester or two if you're kind of like me, lost and confused, trying to figure out what you want to do in the world. So I did that for my first semester. And then after that, so this is way before I graduated too. After that first semester, I thought I want to challenge myself in a little bit different ways. I like to think that I'm pretty oriented towards math. Maybe I'll try out some engineering work. So I did a semester of engineering work after that. And didn't love the work that I was doing. I remember chemistry my freshman year was driving me absolutely crazy, but I did take a microeconomics class at that time too. I think second semester was one of the general electives and really enjoyed it. I thought it kind of fit well with how I thought about the world, very logical, and enjoyed it, and thought, this is something that I might want to take a few more classes in. So that third semester, my first semester of sophomore year, I took, I think, as many econ classes as I could to be like, let's see if this is something that I really like and let's dive in head first. And I liked it a lot. I enjoyed the professors, enjoyed what I was learning, and decided it would make a lot of sense to major in this. I didn't know at the time. I was like, where do I go from here once I graduate with an economics degree? What am I actually going to do professionally? I had absolutely no idea. And that was a whole nother learning curve, I think, once I did graduate.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But before that, I wanted to jump in and, embarrass you as we often do with some photos from your college life, in a sense. So tell me, in a sense, I think we have some of you at a football game, like what's happening here.
Yep. So Clemson University is a huge football school. This is me and a couple buddies with our head football coach, who's still our head football coach. But we did some charity events and spent some time there. And that was a lot of what myself and a lot of other students did when we weren't in class, was paying attention to our football team, going to football games, enjoying all that student life has to offer at Clemson. And you can see, there you go. We run onto the field after every game. So that is me and a few friends looking down over the field after we had won a football game with that normally is green grass, but there's just a ton of people out there, as you can see.
What do you think is the things that we learn from the student life, from the fundraisers, the additional activities that you feel, or in your experience at least, you feel have been the things that taught you the most lessons that you carry on to today, if anything?
Yeah, I think there's a ton to learn always in diversifying what you do and opening your eyes up to the different opportunities that you have. And I think that's something that I'm really happy with myself from when I was at Clemson. One of the things that I was involved in a lot of different student organizations, always met a ton of different people. And it's something that I think opens your eyes up that it's not just the one thing that you're working on, or when you're in school, you shouldn't just be saying, oh, I need to go to classes and get A's. And I think there's a lot more to explore and learn from other people and from the opportunities that you have. And that is something that I really enjoyed. And I think I did a handful of different extracurriculars. One of the ones that I looked most fondly on was I was a tour guide at Clemson. So I showed people around the campus and pointed things out. But I think things like that open your eyes up to the different opportunities that are out there too.
You also travel quite a bit. I think this is you and your friends in Serbia. Why were you in Serbia? What happened, in a sense?
Yep, that's also part of, I think, being in school is and part of exploring the other opportunities you have is studying abroad. I'd really recommend it to people who do have the opportunity. And I had the chance to do that, and I went abroad to Serbia, which is definitely unique. I was one, so there were 7 of us in Serbia from Clemson. We're the only American university who sent people on like a school sanctioned program. And it was an incredible learning opportunity, definitely as far out of my comfort zone as I had ever been. But I think things like that are really exemplify kind of being presented with opportunities and saying, you might as well take them and get out of your comfort zone and try and learn something.
I'm just mind blown by this.
Yeah, I was going to say all the pictures from study abroad.
No, very, very cool. What you mentioned, being out of your comfort zone, being able to reach for these opportunities as they're there. This is a very entrepreneurial mindset. Tell us a little bit about this mindset you have, maybe in kind of context of that trip, and how it's like to actually stay, and I wouldn't say stay and fight, but stay your ground when you're out of your comfort zone, and how that translates to today, your world as a startup, or as someone in the startup world as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think a lot of it is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is I think the way that I would put it. It's that these things, when you're not learning unless you're a little bit uncomfortable, you have to be stretched beyond what you already know to really feel and to kind of, I think that's the best way of putting it is you have to be stretched beyond what you know to become uncomfortable. And that's how you learn and how you become comfortable in those situations in the future. So I think understanding that there's opportunities to do things and not shying away and saying like, okay, well, I don't know this and I haven't worked on something like this before, or I haven't been to a foreign country. I certainly had not been to Serbia before I studied abroad, and saying like, well, you know what, there's only one way that you're going to find out. And that's by going and actually doing it and embracing that discomfort and saying, this is a great opportunity for me and something that might not come around again in the future too.
How was it like when you landed there and I'm sure everything is different in any part of the world in a sense. There's different culture, different food, different languages in a sense. How like practical, like story time in a way. How did you feel and how did you start adapting?
It was cold. That's the first thing I remember. I grew up in California and went to school in the Southeast, and I was not prepared for the cold. I didn't have any winter jackets. And I think we landed at the end of January. But there's definitely culture shock. I think usually what you hear with people who study abroad is there's a bit of a honeymoon phase where it's like, oh, you're getting used to the new things. I think for me, there wasn't much of a honeymoon phase. I think a lot of it was just like, okay, this is a lot different. You go and you want to go grab food and you don't speak the language, and it's not necessarily as westernized as some countries as well, where you can show up and you can go speak English and everybody will understand what you're saying. So there's a lot of kind of like trying to figure out how to communicate things from square one, using your hands, motioning to things. And I think that was probably unique for me and how steep the curve was in saying like, okay, it's not something where you can kind of skate into this. You just have to dive into it head first. And I remember things like taking a taxi ride and being told by our professors, if they don't start the meter, get out of the taxi as fast as you can, because once you get there, they're just going to tell you owe them a bunch of money. And I remember in the first week that happened to me, and literally tapping on the glass, telling the guy, I'm getting out of the car, like, start the meter, I'm getting out. And things like that. I think it's uncomfortable, it's learning, but it's fun too, to look back at those memories and say, like, oh, this is something that you did and something that you went through and grew from and have fond memories of.
Yeah, very, very cool. I feel like all of these experiences are really those things that are fundamental to how you handle situations. And we don't realize that when we're in these experiences, how they're forming the way we react and respond for kind of the rest of our lives, even at times. Tell me a little bit about how it was like when you left college, when you started going to the working world. I think one of your first few roles, you were at Epic, and you were.
I was at Epic Systems. Yeah, I wish
I
I
know,
was.
sorry, I had a brain like lag for a second there. I huge fan of the gaming company, but Epic Systems is amazing as well. I mean, Epic is in the name, so I'm sure that was like that's equally as very cool, and we'll get to that in a second. But how was it like moving from a student's point of view into kind of a more project manager role? Many times I feel like that is another steep curve of learning, of exploring, of understanding how the working world works now, which comes with its own culture shocks as well.
Absolutely. It definitely did come with a culture shock. So I ended up at Epic Systems. I really wish I was at Epic Games. I think that would.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
But I ended up at Epic Systems, and I had a couple different opportunities coming out of school, and I think most of them were sales related. And I wanted something that would give me a little bit more technical background. And Epic seemed like a good fit. It's a company that hires a ton of people fresh out of school. So it's a large company. I think there's around 15,000 employees now. But I was in a project management role, which basically meant that I would fly around to different hospital systems and try and install software and teach people how to use the software and configure it to meet their needs. But the adjustment, Epic does a pretty good job of bringing people on just because they bring so many on. I think there were over 250 people in my starting class at the time. So it was a tremendous learning curve for me and tremendous learning period, because they did a lot of things to kind of slow roll your move into the professional world. So I had classes on how to behave with clients, which were basically the same classes that you take at school, except they were from your employer. But things like that, I think, helped smooth out the learning curve for me. But at the same time, a lot of it was just like, okay, the most important thing is always going to be show up on time, know what you're showing up for, and be prepared. And I think a lot of that is what it came down to is kind of be on time, be prepared, and everything else will pretty much sort itself out. And I think there's definitely a learning curve. It's you keep those two things in mind, and I think you can adjust. But yeah.
No, very cool. And we have a photo. You were saying there's how many thousands of people in
yeah.
this
So this was
Yeah.
this was one of the all hands that I was at. So every first Monday of the month, we had a company all hands that was in person. So people, if there were people who were remote, it was pretty rare at the time. I think it's gotten more common from the friends I talked to still work there. But everybody would fly into Madison, Wisconsin, is where the company is located, and we'd go into this giant. They have a unique campus. It was built by the same people who built Disney World, and there's that auditorium basically where everybody goes into. You go listen to the new features that are rolling out, listen to CEO talk about kind of overall direction, and that's once a month. And it was actually pretty cool. I mean, I don't think there's many companies that do a 10,000 person plus all hands on a monthly basis.
No, that is super cool. And I'm sure that initial kind of, as you said, period of time of having that first role and having that guidance, that support, that even that community in itself was very important for your working experience. I remember someone once told me your first boss is super important because they just set your expectation and set your working standard for the rest of your life and your rest of your career in a way. Tell me a little bit about.
I would agree with that, and I do want to mention too. I think it's easy to end up in places where you're not stretched initially, or you don't have somebody who's telling you like, oh, you did this and you should have done this. I think I was in a unique circumstance where I had a very great, we called our bosses team leads, but I had a great team lead. He really stretched me, and when he left the company, and I noticed that my growth pretty much stagnated immediately after. There wasn't somebody there to stretch me. And if I had had a different, I think, team lead initially when I joined, my life may have looked a lot different, I think, thereafter, because I wouldn't have been stretched and I would have potentially fallen into a place where I would have been like, this is fine.
Tell us a little bit about what you feel makes a good team lead, in a sense, or makes someone like you now run your, like, you have your own teams, you have your people that you guide in turn. What do you think you do differently, or that even the original first team lead that you had did, that enabled you to not only be stretched in terms of your capabilities and have to give your best and give a little bit more and like thoughts into things, but what else did they do to support you, in a sense, and what can people do to support their teams while they're in this high pressure zone at times?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number one thing is being held to high standards. I think if you have a manager or a boss who's saying like, oh, substandard work is okay, and it flies, I think that bleeds in the organization as a whole, but it also bleeds into your work, because you're not expected to have your work scrutinized. You're not expected to look and deliver the highest quality of work that you possibly can, because you know that maybe if you deliver a C work product versus an A work product, they're not going to be distinguished or kind of recognized for the quality of work that they actually are. So I think I really benefited from having a boss early on that said, like, you need to bring the best possible game that you have when you're working with other people internally or externally, and you should always deliver your highest quality work product. And if I notice that you can deliver something that's an A and you deliver a B, I wanted somebody who would tell me and be like, I think you did this, you could have done this a little bit better. I think also it's providing guidance. So it's saying like, okay, well, maybe you delivered a B, but you didn't know how you could get to an A for this work. So it's saying, well, this is what excellence would have looked like in this circumstance, and this is how you can get there next time. And let's work towards that right now. And I think holding to high standards and also knowing what those standards are two incredibly important things. And I think I was fortunate enough to have that early on in my career, and I hope to carry that on to my team today as well.
No, very cool. What do you think in like moving in your career, you went on to work as an analyst after that? Why particularly, the slight pivot? Was there like something new that you want to try out, or what kind of made you, or how do you decide, number one, when you're not growing, and how do you decide from that point what's the next best opportunity for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there were a couple things that kind of forced that shift in my head. I didn't feel like I was growing very much at Epic at that point. I think most of the projects that I was on, I was like, okay, this is a little bit repetitive. I didn't feel like I was having much of an impact either. I knew I was having a small impact on the customers that I directly worked with, but on the company as a whole, I think if I did A++ job, or if I was absolutely terrible, it wouldn't have made a huge difference to the company. I think that's kind of the reality that I noticed. And that, coupled with the lack of learning for me, just kind of told me that, okay, it's probably time to check something else out, try and kind of build out that tool set or toolkit or belt of skills, however you want to think about it. And once I realized that wasn't happening, I was like, okay, I should probably evaluate some other opportunities, see where I can go. When you think about kind of, I want to keep in mind here that I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. So if you would have said at that point in my life, what do you want to do 5-10 years from now? I would have said, I don't know. I want to do something that I enjoy and that I think I'm making a large impact on. But I still wanted kind of something broader to try and help me figure out what I wanted to work in. And I ended up taking a job as an analyst at SunTrust Robinson Humphrey, which is a corporate investment bank. And I was working mainly on the
A little bit different from the IT and healthcare, but okay, yeah,
just a little bit. And it was funny enough, like one of the things in that interview process was build a financial model. And I remember just going to YouTube and trying to figure out and saying like, all right, how do I build a financial model? Let's figure that out so I can move along in this interview process. But it ended up being exactly kind of what I was hoping for at SunTrust, where I was getting that broader business education. I was exposed to dozens of businesses that were both small and large. So I worked on lending for like Disney was one of the clients that I worked with, and then also like very small energy and petroleum companies. So there were, exploration and production companies, E&P companies, but it was I got to see a lot of different businesses and how they operated. And I think that was good learning for me. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I really love the story of how you like. I learned this on YouTube for the interview process, and again, as we established, since it's a bit of a drift from what you were used to. How did you go about, learning those skills? Because I'm sure you did absolutely brilliantly in that skill and in that role as well. But what do you think enabled you to learn the things that you needed on the spot as quick as possible to be able to do that role? Because getting in the door is one thing; being able to perform is a completely different thing. So what's the secret sauce in a way?
Oh, I was terrible the first few weeks.
No.
But it's not. I think I came in off cycle as an analyst, and the expectation was kind of like, okay, you're supposed to know all this stuff, and the reality was I knew very little relative to, I think, what somebody with experience would have known. So a lot of it was trying to figure things out as quick as possible. And I think the way that I look at that is usually try and understand the goal of the work that you're doing. So look and say, okay, what's the actual thing that I'm trying to accomplish from this work that I'm producing or this project that I'm on? Why are we doing this? And if we do well, what's this going to show up as? So what would that end product look like? And then you can break that end product down into its component parts and actually work on each component part that way. So I think that was kind of the framework that I took into things was, okay, if I need to put together some sort of investment memo or addendum for a credit agreement, what is the final work product? And the goal is to try and get this thing approved or not approved, and then work backwards from there and say, okay, these are the steps that I need to take. This is the financial model that I need to put together. This is the narrative that I need to write. And this is what excellence would look like in each of those. It took me a while to figure that out because I didn't know what those component parts were and what work went into that initially. But a lot of it is, I think, relying on the other people that you work with, asking a lot of questions, having an open mind, and listening to. I think you sometimes won't know the goal initially, or you might need to push for clarity on the goal. But once you have an understanding of that, you can usually break it down and work towards that goal.
Oh, very cool. I think you stayed in the whole industry for your next role as well as you continue to progress in your career. And then you also made a pivot back into this startup world of healthcare again. Tell us a little bit about what you learned from your career that made you want to, go back to the healthcare world in and of itself. And what were some of the things that you felt could or in your career as a whole you needed to be able to thrive and go that you didn't, that enabled you to make that pivot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I was looking for opportunities, I was thinking, okay, I want to go work in this specific area or do this specific thing. I was more so optimizing for as much growth as I could have in my career as quickly as possible. So I was thinking like, okay, where am I going to go learn as much as possible, kind of drink from a fire hose and be able to apply those skills elsewhere? Because I think one of the things that I really deeply believe is that industry expertise is oftentimes overrated, and it's more useful to get as much knowledge and learn how to work through problems as possible. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I knew that it was to learn a lot and it was to optimize for learning. And I came across Clipboard Health, and a lot of the material that we kind of present on our website, and we have a culture hub that I sent along to you. I know you're going to flash that link at some point here, but we have a culture hub and we have like a blog, and I read those things and I was like, okay, this sounds like, yep, there you go. So there's the culture hub. If anybody wants to check that out, but you can see that a lot of what Clipboard Health cares about is really trying to grow people and help them scale their career as quickly as possible. And I was not looking to get back into healthcare. I think I was actually probably looking to avoid healthcare. I think there's a lot of red tape and a lot of things that make things move more slowly, which makes it really hard to optimize for learning and grow quickly. And I would emphasize we have Clipboard Health in our name. So we have health in there, but we very much view ourselves as a technology company. And I think that was sold to me while I was in the interview process as well, is that this is we operate a staffing marketplace. So a tech-enabled staffing marketplace that really it's not siloed off into the healthcare space. We could go out and apply the same technologies, same concepts that we have to pretty much any different industry or vertical. We just happen to operate in the vertical or kind of corner of the economy that is healthcare today.
No, and I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. You're a Series C startup. You're one of Y Combinator's top companies, and you're featured on by them as well for that. And you are a global team of hundreds of people who work together from across time zones, across like regions for this central goal. Tell me a little bit, like we mentioned earlier, that what was important for you was the ability to make an impact in the organization that you have. How do you do you feel that you do have that ability now? And if so, what do you think are the factors that enable you to give back to the company? What do you think enables you to be able to have that impact on the organization today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was probably the most important thing when I was looking for a new opportunity, was how much of an impact can I have on the company. I think at some of the previous companies that I was at, it was just hard when there's a ton of people within the company. You can be excellent at a junior level, and you're not going to have the chance to move up quickly if there's a ton of structure in place. So I think Clipboard really offered that to me. And one of the things that is unique is I think we hire a lot for what we call kind of general athlete. So we don't necessarily need somebody who has 15 years of experience in some specific area that can come to Clipboard and tell us like, oh, this is how you need to go work on things. And I was told that during the interview process as well. It was like, okay, we want people who can think through difficult problems, understand things, and communicate them clearly, specifically in writing. So I think when you look at Clipboard and you look across some of our leadership team, you can see a lot of young faces like myself, I would say. And I think what we do well is we say, we don't necessarily need somebody who has 10 or 15 years of experience before we put them in a position that stretches them. It may not be something that they've done before, but they've shown signs that they'd be capable of managing a team or working through a hairy problem and boiling that down and being able to drive the company towards a solution. So this was, when I joined the company, I was really thinking, how much of an impact can I make? And I was hired into this role that doesn't exist anymore today, because I think I was the first and only person who was hired into this role, but it was called a product scout. So I was hired as a product scout, which is kind of a funny name, but it was basically like, hey, you went through our interview process, which has a couple cases. You could go through the cases really well. You could kind of clearly express your thinking. And we want you to come into Clipboard Health and figure things out and make us a better company. What exactly that looks like, we're not 100% sure, but we know that you are capable and can do these things. So dive in, dip your feet in the water and figure some things out. And that's still kind of our mantra today, is when people join our company or join our product team, it's not necessarily like, this is the problem that you're going to work on. It's more like, all right, go talk to some customers, learn about customer problems, and figure out how to solve those problems.
That sounds super fun and super easy to do, but it's not. It's actually really tough to bring value in that way, to find the problem in itself. And I think that many of us, we're taught by the book, like, if you do A, B, and C, you will get result B, or you come in for this job, you do A, B, and C, and that's your job. To say, okay, I'm going to figure out the problem, and I'm going to figure out the solution, and I'm going to implement this across the company, is definitely something a little bit more challenging at the very least. But I'm sure definitely much more intellectually stimulating as well than the rest of it. So tell me that initial experience. What did you do when you first came in? What was it like, in a sense?
Yeah, I would agree with what you said too. I think it is a million times more intellectually stimulating. Just a note from that. I still talk with our head of product about this, and we laugh. But after, I think, 3 weeks or a month, I was working on my first project, which I'll get to. And I sent him a note. I was like, this is by far the hardest I've had to think for a job. And we still talk about it and laugh about it, because it's like, I had never been in a position where I was stretched this much intellectually to be like, okay, I have to go figure things out on my own. And we always talk about first principles thinking as a company. But the first project that I was put on was basically, before I was technically put on the project, I went and talked to a bunch of customers and listened to some of our support calls. And what I continuously heard, and something that customers did a bunch of, was offer specific bonuses to healthcare professionals. So what Clipboard Health is it's a talent marketplace, essentially. So we give healthcare facilities the opportunity to go into a desktop browser or a mobile app, and in the click of a button, request somebody who meets their qualifications. So if you're a staffing coordinator or a director of nursing at a healthcare facility, you can say, I need an RN tonight from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And all they need to do is tap a couple buttons and they can request somebody from Clipboard Health. We do all the vetting on our end. We make sure they're qualified and they don't need to confirm anything. It's very simple for them. All they need to do is post a shift and we'll get somebody directly into that shift for them. So that is how our marketplace operates. Of course, the healthcare facility, they pay us, we pay the healthcare professional. And what we noticed a lot of was healthcare facilities were having to go outside of our platform to go pay healthcare professionals certain amounts of money. So they'd say like, maybe we really need somebody for this shift, so we'll pay a bonus. And they would have to pay that bonus outside of our platform because we didn't have any way of offering that. And it was a customer problem on both sides because healthcare professionals didn't know that certain shifts offered bonuses or that they could earn more for certain shifts. And healthcare facilities didn't want to have to call our support all the time and say, hey, I have a bonus for this shift. So after doing some of the work there, I brought it into the product, and that was my first big project at Clipboard Health. And there's a lot of thinking that goes into that, of course, and how it can affect the marketplace and certain things that can happen to marketplace liquidity, which is, I think, unique in two-sided businesses where there's two different customers that you have to service and make sure that things work out for both of their interests. But a lot of it was also doing things that I had never done before. So thinking through problems like this, writing a bunch, looking at our numbers. What we always say is we want to marry the customer conversations and data together. So it's going and looking at the data and then saying, well, this data matches up exactly with what I'm hearing from customers. And this is a solution that would kind of solve both these problems. So we can move these metrics and also have this problem go away from the customer that we hear about all the time. So that's what I worked on. And it was a project unlike anything I'd worked on before, but it definitely stretched me and gave me a lot of exposure to different areas of the business too.
How do you pitch something like that to your boss? I'm like, okay, you were hired in this role to do this in a way, but how do you make a convincing pitch of like to an organization that is moving super fast that this is the thing that they need to focus and invest on? And to have them listen to you. Yeah.
I think it's unique. So our culture is very writing heavy. So we do a ton of writing before we greenlight anything. So the main device that we use are working backwards documents is what they're called. So they were popularized by Amazon way back in the day. But basically for an initiative like this, it would be, okay, first I'm going to go out and talk with a bunch of customers and I'm going to come up with some idea. I'm going to write a memo, whether we call them investment memos, and say like, this is what I think we have a customer problem here and we have a potential solution. Here's kind of the general framework of that solution. And I think we could do something that would really impact the customer and make our marketplace quite a bit better. So we use a written device for that. That device is then shared with the team and we put together a portfolio of work. So we say, okay, for the next quarter, these are the things that we're going to work on. And then once we have kind of those, if you have an idea, you write it down, people read it, they scrutinize your work. So they give you feedback and they say like, oh, well, did you think about this? Or did you think about this? And then once we greenlit the general idea, we don't just go start building something because there's a lot more work that goes into it before that. We use that working backwards document device to basically write out what exactly we want to solve, how specifically we're going to solve this problem, what metrics we should be looking at to make sure that we're providing a better customer conversation or a customer experience. Go speak with customers and back up that data by saying like, not only do I see this happening and it creates this amount of support tickets, but I talked to 20 customers and they all say, this is the most annoying thing I have to deal with my day to day is that I have to call you guys and tell you that I want to do this thing when I should just be able to do it. And putting together kind of a coherent document and saying, this is exactly what we need to build. And then making it specific enough to be able to say, once we have this document and we do a table read of it, I'll explain what a table read is in a second too, but then we'll go start building something and we'll deliver this to customers as fast as we can. And the table read piece, I think this is one of the funniest things and one of the biggest adjustments that I had at Clipboard Health is we'll spend all this time on documents and every meeting that we have requires a document. And then you share this document and you'll invite some people to the meeting. And the first 15, 30, sometimes hour of the meeting is nobody talking, everybody's on video, and you're just reading a document and you're commenting in the document. And our COO has this thing where at the start of meetings all the time, he goes, well, I'll see you in the document. And then everybody just stops talking and you go into that document, you start commenting and have full conversation threads in the margins of document. So that's kind of how we work, and that's how we greenlight something. So for me, it was, I wrote a document on it. We got some feedback. I got some feedback, and it doesn't always require everybody agreeing. There might be people who say like, I don't think we should build this. This might have negative second order consequences. And we're not a consensus driven culture, but you get the green light from our head of product or from myself today, and we build it, and then we go from there.
Absolutely amazing. I'm gonna turn this on its head in a sense, and right now you are the head of strategy. You are the head of like operations in a way. What do you look for in the people that you are hiring, or the people in your team in a sense? Because you seem to have gone like above and beyond a little bit here and kind of finding the problem, doing all of this work and all of that. What do you look for now that you are on the other side of the table in a way?
Yeah, there's really a few things that I'd say we look for when we're kind of evaluating candidates. One of the big things is an ability to do math. I think it sounds funny, but I think there's a lot of jobs that you can get where you don't really need to do math, or the company may not tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, but so we have case studies throughout. We have 2 case studies in our interview process, and one of those is make sure that people can do math. They're comfortable with numbers. They can come up with metrics and say like, this is the best solution and this is why. And I ran the numbers and can tell you why. So that's a funny one, but that's kind of table stakes for us. And then writing is a huge one for us. So that's another thing that we evaluate in cases. And then for actual interviews, so these conversations, I think generally it's kind of, do people understand the reasons that they did things is the number one thing. Did they ask the why? So if somebody was working on some process for their previous job and they had to enter data for something, it's like, well, why were you entering the data? Why was it important? Was there a better way to do that? And really kind of digging into the why is a huge thing. So curiosity is something that we really value quite a bit. And it boils down into curiosity, initiative, and ownership, I would say, are kind of the 3 things that we really care about.
No, I like it. I think that's pretty staple for any successful person to be able to adapt those things into their work kind of mode and workflow in a way. I'm also very curious about how you guys interact as a company, because you guys are a remote company, right? And I love that story about going on a Google Doc, just because I work, so I know to get everyone to look at the document is a pain. So I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna be like, guys, today's agenda, get on the Google Doc and like edit the doc in a sense. So I get that. I really do get that in a way. And especially I think coming out of the pandemic, we all have this newfound love, hate, fondness, confusion regarding remote working, in the sense that we know it works, but at the same time we kind of miss our friends and we kind of miss that interaction of being around other people. How do you guys balance this as a company? I mean, you are a remote company. How do you interact with others as well and keep that community, that sense of kind of like that sense of teamwork, of working together towards the shared goal?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are 100% remote. In the company, we have over 30 countries represented from people all over the globe. And we do a lot of our work in writing. I think I am not personally a big fan of Zoom or Google Meets. Usually, I think it's tough to kind of build relationships and understand what people are doing and where they're coming from. So we are very meeting light. One of every meeting requires a document. So you can't just put a meeting on people's calendar and say, hey, we're going to talk about this. You have to have some agenda or some document before. You should absolutely use it. I will say it's a great way to get people together and make sure that they know what they're talking about and know what they're discussing. So you should do it for your own meetings. But the number one way that we kind of build that team rapport is through offsite. So for our product team specifically, we get together once every 3 to 4 months. So we recently got together at the end of August, early September, and we're getting together again in December. So we get together, we bring the whole team together, build kind of the things that you can't over a remote company. We do as much as we can online. We have the occasional like happy hour online. We have an open door policy on Slack, as we call it. So if you want to talk to somebody, you can just call them. That's the equivalent of going and stopping by somebody's desk. Is you just call them on Slack directly. They can decline your call, but you don't need to give them warning. So we do things like that, but the offsites I think are great for building a team. We get together and we have the chance to meet everybody. Yep. So I know you have a few pictures here too. So this
what is this? What's happening here?
Yeah, so we went on a farm and food tour. This was in Northern California. So that was the food portion. We also did a little farm portion. There's the farm. That's Natalia, one of our product managers or group product managers, holding a baby goat. So we saw some baby goats. It was a cold, rainy day in Northern California, but it was a very fun experience to go see some baby goats and eat some wonderful farm to table food. So we do things like that. We get together and do fun things.
No. I also have one of you guys kayaking, and okay, this requires a lot of teamwork and coordination. So kayaking, good team bonding, and all of that. Why do you think it's important to have fun in a startup? And I say this because I run a startup, and I know that it can be very high paced and it can be very stressful. And sometimes when things are moving fast and when things are going good work wise, we tend to forget that element of, and I think this is staple for anyone working on intensive projects, that fun element of it, or the element of we should do this bonding activity, we should do this cool thing as a team, often gets put on the back burner in a way. So why is it important to have events like this?
Yeah, it's huge for team building, kind of like you said. I think it can be difficult to remember, like, oh, why do I want to do this? Well, this person asked me for this document. Like, they're always asking me for things or something like that. And I think being able to go and meet the person and shake their hand and go have fun with them is huge, to be able to say, like, okay, now I know this person. It builds camaraderie in the workplace. And also I think it helps understand where people are coming from. And overall, I think for us, it helps us understand why the work we do is important too. One of the things that we do on our offsites is go visit customers. So we go visit a healthcare facility to see what's actually going on, talk to them, and build some empathy for them as well, to understand why the work we're doing is important. But the offsites, I think, are great, not only to build that empathy, but to understand the people you work with, and it's fun. I mean, that's a huge portion. It breaks up the monotony of the day to day, and you get to go hang out with somebody, create some memories, have a really good time. And I think that's important enough in its own self, I would say.
Very, very cool. For everyone who is in a sense like you know, in some shape or form, and are looking to find a career for themselves that pushes them, that gives them the ability to, you know, really put their capabilities to the test, and at the same time have the environment around them that guides them, that's conducive, that's fun, that's constantly enabling them to make the changes that they want, and in the organization that they're in. Where do we start thinking about this? Because sounds like everyone wants these things, but how do we get there? How do we think about things like these?
You apply to Clipboard Health, the shameless plug.
Wow.
No, I think you should evaluate places and kind of learn what is going to give you the biggest growth opportunities, and really ask kind of like, where do people go from here? What does this position catapult me into? I would say that is huge. Kind of knowing what exposure you're going to get, knowing what things and what skills you're going to learn, what problems you're going to work on is massive. And then being able to take ownership of those problems is really important too. With that said, we are hiring at Clipboard. I'd invite people to search Clipboard Careers. You can just Google it and you'll be able to help or find out Clipboard Health Careers. That's the little spiel I'll give there. We're hiring a ton across the board.
Nope, so you brought it up, so now you've got to tell us the whole spiel in this end. So if someone's interested, how do they contact you? What should they prepare before, you know, they go into this interview? Like tell us what an eager college student wanting to join your team should know about the company, should know about themselves reaching out to the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the big things that you said, that you mentioned, is being in a startup there's a lot. It can be kind of, things move very quickly. You're lots expected of you. So I think knowing that you're going to be doing a lot and have a lot of ownership, and it can be kind of it can feel like a lot of weight to carry, is one thing that I would want to make sure that people are comfortable with, and knowing like, okay, I want to be in a position where I can really drive a lot of impact. And if I perform well, the company is going to do well. And if I don't perform well, the company might not do as well. So I think that's a big thing when thinking about Clipboard, is knowing like, I want to be a high performer and I'll be held to that standard. But overall, you can get in contact with us. We have a product team blog that you can check out. It's creatingvalue.substack.com. There it is. So yeah, I'd say check that out for some information about how we work, what our product team standards are at Clipboard Health. that's a great place to start. And then you can just go to our job board and apply. And I think we, as a company, do an amazing job at publishing a ton of information about what it's like to work at Clipboard. So you can go to the blog, you can go to our Culture Hub, which you had shown previously. And those are places where you can really learn a lot about what it's like to work at Clipboard Health and the opportunities that we have available also.
Very, very cool. So final words, if you could go back and travel in time to you when you were entering college and had no idea what this whole working world was like, what you wanted to do, what motivated, what engaged you at all, what would be the 30-second cheat code that you'd tell your past self in a way?
Oh, I'm not telling myself anything. I'm letting myself figure it out. I think that's part of the fun is you can't get all the rewards without having to figure some things out and go through some of the trials and tribulations first. So I think I tell myself, enjoy it and just try a bunch of things out and learn, and it'll all work out.
Well, I'll take that as our parting words then. And thank you so much for being on the show. I had so much fun in this conversation, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts, your experiences, and how you essentially created the work reality that you wanted. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Harsha, and thank everybody for listening. But it was great speaking with you as always. And yeah.
All right. And with that, to our audience, we truly, truly enjoyed having you guys here as well. As always, it's a pleasure to have you. And if you enjoyed today's show, make sure you let us know and join us again every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Bye.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on